Nice seeing you here. First time. My name is Raphael, and I'm going to cook with you. In this video, there's going to be several things that you're going to learn. One of the things you're going to learn about is where your cuts of meat come from. So that way you're going to be able to make an intelligent, wise decision when you go to the meat counter and tell the butcher, hey, I want that piece of meat and I want it this way. For example, what we're going to start today with is we're going to start with the eye of the round. Now the eye of the round comes from what is known in the meat industry as the full round. What I have here is about almost 3 pounds of solid meat. And that's the wonderful thing about it, is that you have no waste. You're not going to have any bones, and you're going to have very little fat. So it's going to be economical for you and your family. Solid piece of meat. So let's get started on this. This is like I said, is the eye of the round. We take it out of the package. And as you pick up the meat out of the package, you may find some meat juices. Some people call it blood. So just take a paper towel, wipe it down a little bit, put it on your cutting board, put this away. And you'll note that I have what is known as a 10-inch chef's knife. And I also have what is known as a ceramic steel. Ceramic steel will lift up the edge of your knife. It's not going to sharpen it, but it will lift it up. So just gently and easily run your knife down on each side. If your knife is already pretty well sharpened, then you only have to do this a few times. Put that aside. Now you want to use the steel. The steel is exactly what it is. It's a piece of steel, and this is the one that will straighten up that edge of your knife. It will be very sharp. One thing you want to always remember is that a sharp knife is safer than a dull knife, because with a dull knife you're going to force the knife through the meat, and there's the possibility that it can slip and either cut your hand or your fingers. A knife that is extremely sharp is safer for you. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to cut this between a 1/4 to 1/8 inch thick. So use your knife gently. It's sharp enough. Just cut it. Look at this. That's nice and thin. Put it to one side. Do another piece. The same thing. You notice how I'm not really forcing the knife. It's doing most of the work for me. Even if you get it a little bit thick like that, you're going to see that you're going to be able to pound it and make it the same with all of them. Okay, so we do as many as we want to. Now you're going to say, have 12 pieces. You're going to have 4 people or 3 people. Cut just the amount of meat that you need. Okay, so now that I've cut this piece of meat, I want you to understand why you need to tenderize this meat. Because remember, the round comes from the hindquarter. The round is actually part of the animal's butt. Therefore, he's going to be using that muscle quite a bit, walking around, running, doing whatever he has to. So you need to tenderize it. How do you do that? Very simple. Let's put this meat away for a moment. I want you to have a tool like this, a meat tenderizer. You notice that one side is flat, the other side has, let's call them spikes. Now most people, most meat cutters or chefs will tell you to put a piece of plastic paper between the piece of meat and then pound it. I don't do that. Remember, when you're using this tool, you're not breaking concrete out of a driveway. You're pounding a small piece of meat. So what I do is I take my piece of meat, spread it out just on my cutting board, use the part of the meat tenderizer with the spikes on it. And you notice that as I'm using it, I'm pushing the meat to the edges. You don't have to do it a lot. Flip it over to the other side, repeat. Repeat the same process. What you're now doing is you're breaking up the fibers in the meat. Now, last thing you do, use the flat side and just flatten that out. You remember how small it was in comparison to what it is now? Probably was about that size. Now it's spread out. You've tenderized a piece of meat. Do the same thing, repeat it, the other piece. And if you happen to cut a piece of meat a little bit thicker than a quarter or 1/8 inch, do the same thing. You notice how when I'm pounding at it, I'm pushing the meat over to the edge. I'm breaking up the fibers on the meat and at the same time tenderizing the meat. And you notice I'm not splattering the meat. So do I need that plastic paper? Nah. Then do the flat side. Follow the same process. Push the meat over to the sides of the cutlet. Okay, so here we have 3 plates. You want to use 3 plates. You notice that I'm using pie pans. There's a reason for it. The reason is in case the dish falls off the counter, it won't break. Oh yeah, you may have a bit of a mess, but you can clean that up. Also, notice that each of the pie plates is a little bit deeper than a regular dish. Therefore, you can put more of your product in the dish. The other thing that you want to do is the second dish that you want to have in a row is the egg and milk mixture. So here I already measured out a cup of whole milk. Now, I like to use 2 eggs. I don't know why. I just like them. And that's what I use. I go ahead and put it into the measuring cup. And now I'm going to use a fork. If you happen to have a small little whisk, that's fine too. I just seem to use a fork much better. Therefore, I go ahead and mix it in the milk. Now, if you want to, you can put seasoning into the milk and egg mixture. You note that I have some already in the dish. So just go ahead and mix it together. And this is just adding flavor to the food that you're cooking. You don't want to beat it too much, just enough so that you have a good mixture with the milk and the egg. Then pour it back into the dish. Now you're ready for the coating. The third pie pan is the one that you will have with breadcrumbs. Now, you could also use panko. Okay, so when you pour the breadcrumbs, make sure you have plenty in the dish because you will end up using it. Just get it ready. You notice that the breadcrumbs that I have here has the seasoning in it already. So therefore, you're not going to have to spend the time or the money to add more seasoning to it. Get it ready. Now, you have your 3 dishes ready for you to start cooking. We have to heat up the oil. And what I use is high heat oil. What I mean by that is oil that will be able to be heated up to 400 degrees. Usually oil like say regular olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, will not take the heat. So what I like to use is high heat oil. By that what I mean is that it's oil that will be able to take up to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. So what I use is grapeseed oil. Grapeseed oil will take high heat, therefore also will not impart any particular flavor to the meat. The temperature of the oil has to be around 350 degrees. But now, if you don't happen to have a thermometer to check the oil, how do you do it? Well, the simplest way is grab a little bit of the breadcrumbs or maybe a little bit of the other product here and throw it into the pan. So now what I'm going to do is throw a little bit of the breadcrumbs in. You'll notice what happens when I put it in there. You notice how the oil begins to sizzle and the breadcrumbs begin to sizzle. You also may note a little bit of oil coming up or smoke coming up. That is hot, and that's what you want. So now, I'm going to turn the fan on here, just because now we're getting a little bit of smoke, and we don't want it to be too smoky. Now you notice that we have the 3 pans in a row, because you're going to use these 3 pans in sequence. For example, the very first thing you're going to do, take a piece of meat, put it into your cornstarch, and pat it. Lightly pat the meat. You may have to do it twice, but you want to do both sides. Now you see how the meat is coated. Okay, the next thing you do is you put it into the egg and milk mixture. You coat it real well, shake it a little bit, and go to the breadcrumbs. Do the same thing. Coat it. And you see how nicely it is coated on both sides. Then, when you put the meat in, this is a real important safety tip. Do not put the meat and pour it towards you. You put the meat in gently away from you, because that way you avoid having the possibility of splashing that hot oil either on your hand or on your arm. Okay, so here we are, 3rd piece. Shake off the excess, put it into the egg and milk wash, put it into your breadcrumbs, and before you know it, that first piece is already cooked. So now, you flip it over. Now this got a little brown on the side because on the edges has more heat to it. This was the 2nd piece I put in there. Now we'll do the same thing. Flip it over. Notice how nicely brown it is. Not too dark. Even if it's a little dark like that, don't worry about it. You're going to enjoy it. 3rd piece. You can now flip this one over also. Okay, here we go. Now we got the first piece to take out. You put a piece of paper on the pan, put your meat in there, your 2nd piece, and your 3rd piece. Believe me, it's done. Look at it. Nicely done. You don't want this meat to be too well done, because then it dries out too much. Now, you put another piece of paper towel for your next layer of meat. That way it soaks up the oil. Okay. And so there you are, you're set. You're ready to have a delicious meal with your family. And believe me, remember the sandwiches I told you about? It's going to be heaven for you when you taste that. In fact, I'm going to let you taste it right now. So here we are, we're cutting this nice, tender piece of cutlet. Good flavoring in it. And look at that. Oh. Then you taste it. See, it's not too well done, just rare. By cooking it for 1.5 minutes. Next time that we get together, I'm going to show you one of the most delicious roasts you will ever have eaten. A chuck roast, cooked Italian style. Now that chuck roast is going to be tender. It's going to have a lot of vegetables in it. You'll be able to use the au jus just like it is, or you will be able to make some gravy out of it. Either way, you're going to love it. Ciao.